All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brooke, and I'm an education specialist with the Nebraska Farm Bureau Foundation through Nebraska Agriculture in the Classroom. And I'm here today with Farmer Mitch, who is a farmer near Aurora, Nebraska, and he's going to be able to share a little bit about what he does during harvest time on his farm. And Mitch is near his cornfield today. There's some weather that is preventing him from being able to get into the field to harvest, but we have some videos that are going to be able to show you up close what harvest looks like. And so Mitch is going to share some more information with us, but corn is a really big part of Nebraska and our state. It's so important that we call ourselves the Cornhuskers even. Every year, Nebraska raises over 1 billion acres of corn, and we rank number 3 in the United States for corn production. And so when we think of all of the different corn products that come from agriculture, it provides for us each and every day. So it could be even in the fuel in our vehicles, the food that we purchase to eat, and even byproducts such as toothpaste, lotion, and fireworks. And so those are called byproducts from corn. A majority of Nebraska's corn in Nebraska is grown to feed our livestock animals and for ethanol production. And Mitch will be able to share a little bit about what he grows his corn for today and the different uses that we can get from that type of corn. So today we're going to learn more about agriculture and corn harvest with my friend Mitch. Hey Mitch, can you share a little bit about yourself and your family farm?
Yeah, hi Brooke. As Brooke said, I'm Mitch. Me and my family farm over here by Aurora, Nebraska, which is pretty much centrally located in the state. I am generation number 6 on our family farm. I farm with my dad and my younger brother, Matt. We raise corn, soybeans, and we do some seed corn for a seed company here in Aurora. Yeah, Brooke, this is our third or fourth time doing this. So it's good to be back. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask.
Hey, Mitch, did you have to go to school to be a farmer?
You don't technically have to, no. But I went for a specialty part of farming. I have my degree from the University of Nebraska in agronomy. What that is the study of plants and soil and how they interact, and the best ways for us to grow crops on our ground.
Yeah, so it definitely helped you kind of take some of those skills back to help you farm your corn and your acres there. Do we have any questions for Mitch as we get started? If you have a question and want to come to the screen, you can send one student up and I'll try my best. But before we get started really diving into the combine, does anybody have any questions for Mitch about farming? Let's see. Is there anybody in Mrs. Williamson's class that have a question?
Mrs. Gibbons' class has one question.
Perfect. You want to come on up?
Mm-hmm. So I was going to see how Mitch knows what time it's going to be harvesting time.
Ooh, that's a great question. Did you hear that, Mitch?
Yep. So we kind of go off of two things. One, we go off of kind of the time of year. We plant on a certain date in the spring, and then we can kind of figure out how long the lifespan of a corn plant is. And so we typically try to start picking corn around the 10th of October, 10th to 15th of October. It can be earlier than that, depending on the summer and how dry it is. But for us to be able to go pick corn, we have to have our corn at a certain moisture content. And when it gets to the correct moisture, then we can harvest it and either take it to the elevators or to our grain bins here to store for the winter.
That's a great question. I have a picture of an up close ear of corn that I might share with you here for a second on my screen, if you can see it. Can you all see my screen? this is what the corn plant looks like when it's getting ready to be harvested or picked. And so you can kind of see Mitch, when he talks about corn, he has to look at the moisture. And as that corn kernel starts to dry out, we start to see little tiny dents in the kernels there. Very good. All right, so before we move on, we need to know a little bit more about corn. And that was a great question to get us started. When does Mitch know when it's time to harvest their corn? But corn, we said, is planted in the spring and it's harvested in the fall. And we plant our corn in acres. How big is an acre, Mitch? What would you compare it to?
1 acre is the size of 1 regulation football field.
Okay, so if you think about Memorial Stadium where the Huskers are going to play on Saturday, that is about 1 acre of land. And we had a question from Mrs. Streck's class. It says, how many acres of land do you typically plant for corn each year?
It's pretty variant based on the previous year. For this year, my farm alone, away from I farm ground separate from my dad, and my ground this year I had a little over 620 acres of corn. This year, last year I had a little over 800. So it kind of depends on the year, on the crop, and how the markets are doing for us here. So, do
you rotate your crops each year? Do you have?
We try to. It just, like I said, it depends a lot on what the markets are doing, what the fertilizer markets, how much fertilizer is going to cost us for the next year. So we kind of look at the fields as individual pieces, and we kind of make a management plan for each field.
Great. We have another question. Have you already pre-sold some of your corn, wheat, or soybeans for the year? We talked about sometimes that farmers pre-sell their corn to the marketplace.
Yep. I actually had corn for 2021 sold last fall. So I had some pre-marketed almost a year ago, actually. Now it would have been in November of 2020 for this year's crop. So yeah, I try to, before I plant a crop, I like to have a certain amount sold, just kind of as a safety net for us in case the market does happen to go up or down. It's find kind of like a middle ground as to what can make us money. So we're not just sticking it all at the elevator and in the fall. So
very good. That's a great question as well. We also had another question. How many bushels do you sell on average each year?
Oh,
do you, or if it works out, if it's a better question, on average, how many bushels per acre do you harvest?
There we go. Yeah, it's all, a lot of it has to do with Mother Nature and the weather. Some years we'll have anywhere from, say, 240 to 250 bushels an acre, and other years we'll have 280 bushels an acre. So there's so much that goes into what we get out. If I had to give you an average number, I would probably go with the 240 to 250 number.
Yeah. So that's two per acre. So if you think about the acres, that's the size of a football field, and his combine we're going to look at can collect so many bushels per acre. And Mitch might know that number off the top of your head, but it depends on the size of the combine that you're using. But before we move on, Mitch, what types of corn do we grow in Nebraska? Do you know the different types that you could share with us?
I do. I don't know. Hopefully I can name them all for you. So on our farm, we grow yellow corn for ethanol production for gas. We grow food grade yellow corn, which goes to places that gets made into all different kinds of food, chips and tortillas and all that other stuff. And then there's white corn, which is what is used to make your flours and your flour chips and stuff like that. And then there's popcorn, there's sweet corn, there's like I said, I don't know if I can name them all right now off the top of my head, but
no, that's great. Yes. So we said the main types of corn is field corn or dent corn, and that's what we use to feed our livestock animals. That's the majority of the corn grown in Nebraska. It can also be used to turn into ethanol and our other byproducts. And Mitch grows that kind of corn a little bit on his farm, as well as commercial corn, which is seed corn that is going to be grown so that farmers have corn to plant the next year in their fields. So that process is a little bit different as well compared to some of the the corn that we grow. And Nebraska is the #1 popcorn producer in all 50 states. So it grows on the cob just like the other corn does. Mitch, when you planted your corn this spring and it began to grow, what steps did you do during the summer to prepare your crops for harvest in the fall?
Well, this year I felt like a gardener. We spent a lot of time pumping water with our pivots to try to keep our crops growing and alive. We sprayed our herbicides to kill any of the problem weeds that we had coming through. And then we went through and we side dressed more fertilizer on the crops in June. So after we did that, it was just a waiting game, and all we did was pretty much water. So that's kind of what our summer looks like usually, is just chasing irrigation.
Yeah, so especially where you live, irrigation is really common in your area, which means, do you guys have center pivots, or do you do the ground irrigation?
We have a little bit of the pipe irrigation, but 95% of our acres that we farm are run with a center pivot.
Yeah. Do you use technology when you operate your pivot irrigation on your farm?
Oh, yeah. Yes, we do. It makes it really, really nice. We're able to start and stop our pivots from our phones whenever we need to. It just saves us a lot of travel time and a lot of unneeded gas usage in our vehicles, having to travel around to all of our different stuff. We can look at it all through our phones. So
awesome. Yeah. How tall does your corn typically get by the end of summer or by fall when you're ready to pick?
The majority of corn here in this area this year is probably between that 7 to 10 feet tall. So I've seen it in the past where it's been 12 to 14, and I've seen it in the past where it's been 5 to 7. So this is a pretty average year for corn height. It, like I said, it's probably about that, call it 8 feet tall.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty tall. It's taller than most of us. You know, even when we raise our hands above our heads, that corn plant's going to be a lot taller than us by the end of summer. How many ears of corn are on one stalk?
On almost every corn stalk, there will only typically be one ear. There's sometimes that there's 2, but most of the time it's just 1.
Awesome. Mitch, would you mind going outside of your combine and kind of walking around and showing us the different parts and maybe a little bit about how it works? Mitch is in the barn today because it's raining out where he's at today.
Okay, let me get my camera flipped here. Okay, so it's kind of hard to see in here, but corn comes in the rows through these chains that cut the stalk, and then it will go into the corn head and it will be fed into the combine. It'll come into the combine right in through here, and then it goes into a thing called the rotor, which is what crushes the cobs and all the ears, and then it separates all of the trash from the kernels that we want, and then all of the trash will get blown out the back of the combine, and all of the corn that we want to keep. Let me go up here, I can show you. We'll go into the grain tank back here, which then gets taken out of the combine. This auger here will swing out all the way out, and then we put it into a truck or a grain cart that will take it away from the combine. So it's a pretty basic process, but it's a very high-tech process. There's a lot of moving parts in these machines. A lot that can go wrong, and a lot that, as long as it's working right, it works really good.
Awesome. Yeah. So there's a lot that goes into it. The front of the combine, do you know what is the proper term for that? Do you know?
The corn head?
Yeah, the corn head. Is that what they call it? Yep. Sometimes we might call it the snoot as well, but those go right between the rows. And Mitch's combine has technology that lines up his combine to go directly between those rows. And so here in a minute, he's going to show us a little bit about what the inside of that combine looks like with the technology. But there's a lot of different working pieces that help that corn. And when he mentioned the trash that goes out the back, those are the leaves of the stalk and the cobs. And Mitch, do you ever have cattle graze in your cornfields during the winter time?
We actually do, yes. This year we actually are going to have some cattle coming out because we had some issues with our crops this year that the wind damaged a bunch of them. And so there's some corn left on the ground. And so it'll be really good feed for some of the neighbors' cows. And so it's an easy way for us to clean up our cornfields and an easy way for us to make a little bit of extra money on our fields. So
yeah, and some of that corn, those leaves and the husks that you see from that corn cob actually help hold the soil in place during the winter time. I don't know, do you plant cover crops in your area of the state or anything like that?
Yes, we do.
And the purpose of a cover crop is to hold the soil in place during the wintertime. And you can kind of see Mitch has a corn cob right there in a corn stalk.
So the combine will actually, surprisingly enough, will be able to take this corn cob off of the stalk, and it will be able to separate all of the kernels of corn and put it into our combine. And then it will take all this other stuff that's on the stalk and it will throw it out the back of the machine.
Yeah, these machines are really high tech, so they're pretty expensive pieces of equipment, and farmers have to be able to maintain them and keep up with the technology that goes into it. And sometimes those combines can break down and farmers have to get parts to be able to fix them. So we had a question that says, how much does a combine cost? And they're pretty expensive when it comes to purchasing these. So farmers have to make sure that they take really good care of these pieces of equipment. So yes. Do we have any other questions? Do we have any students that want to come up to the screen and ask Mitch a question? I know we're getting several in the chat box, but if there's students that would like to come up, feel free, teachers, to unmute your microphone and have the students answer or ask a question. So I see a student from Ansley.
What is the main crop you plant?
What is the main crop that you plant in your fields?
The main crop that we have on our farm is corn. We have two uses. We have our food grade corn, and then we have the corn that we take to the ethanol plant for ethanol production. So we do have some soybeans, but corn is for sure our number one crop we have here.
Great, thank you. Do we have one in is it Schrolls?
Okay, so we have one from Yanelli. Yep, go ahead.
Do you have farming insurance?
As in like crop insurance, especially since you do the pre-sale.
Yes, we do. We're in a very, very strong storm area. And so that's how we make sure that we protect our farm is we definitely buy crop insurance. Yep.
Yep. So that's another thing that farmers can do. They can choose to buy crop insurance, which protects their farms if something would happen, such as rain or their fields would get wiped out with hail or bad storms throughout the summer. I see a hand raise in, is it Mrs. Williamson's class?
Yep, we have a question. Claire, what's your question?
How large is a bushel?
Ooh, how large is a bushel of corn?
1 bushel is 56 pounds.
So I like to think of it as if you have a round laundry basket at home, and that laundry basket is about the size of 1 bushel of corn that a farmer can harvest. Mitch, do you know how many bushels of corn one of your combines can hold?
Yes, our combine currently right now can hold 340. 340.
So you could get about an acre or a little over an acre done at a time before you have to empty it?
Typically, yes. Typically, it's about 1.2 acres what we can usually get on a combine. Yep.
Great. I have a teacher that says, I have a few students in the class that have dads that sell seed. What company do you buy your seed from?
Our farm this year was all a company called DeKalb. That's what we bought all of our corn from.
Yeah. So just depending on the farmer's preference, there's a lot of different seed companies that provide the corn that they would like to harvest or plant in their fields. And then I had another teacher that was up here. Go ahead and answer or ask your question.
Okay, so do you have to have a license
To farm.
to farm? Yeah.
Do you have to have a license to farm?
We do not have to have a license to farm. Nope, we don't have to have a license to drive farm equipment. I've been driving farm equipment since I've been 10 or 11 years old. So only thing you have to have a license for is to be able to drive like semi on the road.
Yes. So yeah, definitely with you saying that, it's a family operation. And so you guys kind of all work together. And now that you're older and you went to college and kind of got to come back, you have your own farmland that you're able to farm as well. Let's take a couple more questions, and then Mitch is going to show us a little bit about the inside of the combine, and then I'll share a video about what Mitch would be doing if the weather was cooperating with us. So let's take another question. I see another one from Ansley.
Good afternoon.
Is corn all you guys grow around your guys' farm?
So I think he said that they also grow some soybeans as well. And I think there's some other crops that farmers could grow. Maybe is there any sorghum or milo that grow in that area?
We do grow sorghum. Yep, we grow it around all of our seed corn borders is what we do for that. So yep.
What's the reason that you grow sorghum around your cornfields on the outsides of it? Oftentimes when we drive by cornfields, we see that sorghum growing on the outside of cornfields.
Yep. So one of the number one reasons why we do it is because if you grow soybeans back to back on your farm ground, it actually can be kind of hard, and it will pull a lot of nutrients out of the soil. And so we put sorghum down, one to kind of give the soil a break from soybeans, and two, because we're able to spray the same weed killer on the whole field when it's corn and sorghum, because it's the same. It's considered a grass, so we're able to spray the same herbicide across the whole field. So we just don't like having to do multiple years of soybeans back to back, and so that's why we plant it.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. Sometimes we don't think about all of the extra things that go into the soil and the soil health that we need. Mitch, while you're in that combine, can you show us kind of what it looks like from the driver's seat and describe what it looks like from the inside of your combine?
Sure, I'd love to. Okay. So this is the console that I get to look at all day. So this is what we use to get the machine to go forward and backward. And on here, we have, this button right in here controls the height of the corn head up and down. These two buttons here are what swing my auger on the combine out to unload onto the grain cart. And then this is what starts that auger moving. So over here, there's just a lot of buttons that I could try to explain to you guys, but unfortunately, I probably wouldn't do a very good job of explaining it. But a lot of this is just controls that help me get the grain sample in the back of the combine cleaner and help keep the machine running at full capacity. I've got two screens in my cab. One is my iPad, and then one is the main screen on the combine. The main screen on the combine is just basically giving me an overview of what the machine is doing, what the engine speed is, what my corn head height is, what the field is yielding, and then if I have any problems with the combine, all of my problems get sent to this screen right here. My iPad is strictly just for mapping purposes. So as you can tell here, I haven't harvested this side of the field yet, whereas I have harvested this side. You can see, so this has an accurate picture of the yield on our farm, on this farm in particular. So as you can tell, as we're going through the field, this combine is accurately mapping the bushels per acre based on the field conditions. So A lot of technology that I have to look at and run through during the day. It can kind of be overwhelming at times, but when the machine is running good, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's a lot to kind of keep track of when you're in that combine and making sure that you can see your yields, and it shows the moisture of the corn as well. Is that correct? You said?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
so moisture is really important because what happens if you pick corn when it's too wet?
If you take it to the elevator and it's too wet, they will actually, they will dock, which means they will basically take bushels away to help pay for drying it down to the moisture that they want it at. So it's very, very wise for us to take in corn that is the correct moisture, or we can really lose a lot of bushels to our farm. So.
Yeah. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. Farmers have to be really specialized in what they do on their farms and understand kind of how all of the technology and the systems work together so that they can maximize their profits, so that they can continue to farm the next year. The whole goal is to take care of that soil so that they can continue to provide for people for the next year and for the future generations of our families and our state and our whole entire world. A lot of our corn even gets exported to other countries to be turned into different products that we see here. I'm going to share a little video. So Mitch kind of showed us a little bit about what the combine looked like from the outside and the inside. And since we're not able to actually be in the field to harvest, I have a video that I would like to share with you of what that kind of looks like. And I'm going to show just a couple of photos with you on my screen so that you can see some of those things about maybe kind of what that combine might look like out in the field as well. And so I think it's a 2-minute video, and I know we're getting close on time. So we're going to try and get through that and then wrap up with any last minute questions that we have. And there's no sound to the video, just because I thought maybe we can talk through it and if Mitch wanted to explain a little bit as well. But here's what a combine might look like out in the field getting ready. How many rows is your combine, Mitch?
We harvest 8 rows at a time. This one, it looks like it's a 12 row, but we harvest 8.
Yeah, so depending on the size of the combine, really depends on how many rows you can harvest at a time. All combines are a little bit different from each other. And it goes in between the rows, like Mitch was saying. And this is the auger that comes out. So sometimes Mitch can harvest an acre and not have to have a grain cart or a semi truck following him through the field. He can fill up his combine and then unload, or he might have a combine or a grain cart that drives right next to him. What does your family typically do? Or does it really depend on the day?
Well, it depends on who's around to help us typically, but no, we always run a grain cart through the field. Our goal is to never let the combine stop, just because it's a lot more efficient that way. So yep, we do that right there. We run our grain cart next to the combine as much as we can.
Yeah, and this is just kind of an overview. We're going to be able to see that in this video that we watch here. But there's another picture of it. And this combine and this grain cart are following along, collecting that corn, and then they will store it. So I'm going to go ahead and press play so we can see this video playing out here. And this is the same setup that Mitch has.
It's just the wrong color.
I know we had some comments that we have some farmers that have green too. So all different brands. So you kind of got to see that overview over there. And there's the headers or the snoots of the combine that would go in between the rows. Do you have GPS that tells you exactly where to line up your combine?
It's called row sense, and it's actually on the corn head. It's not a monitor that we use, but the corn head will actually kind of feel for the row, and that's what will guide the combine through the field. So
very cool. Yeah. So all of that technology kind of has to play together.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have auto steer on your combine?
We don't on our combine, but we do on all of our tractors.
Can you share a little bit about what that means?
Yep. So auto steer is basically just a computer system that will drive our equipment for us down the row straight. We have it on all of our tractors because that's what we plant the corn with. And once we get the corn planted exactly straight how we want it, we typically will just drive our combine in the row. That's why we have those special things on the corn head that will keep the combine going straight through the row. So we don't have to worry about having another monitor for us to watch in the cab of the combine.
Yeah, so you could see just a little bit ago some of those graphics from the video. That was actually of a soybean harvest with the computer system set up there, but we're getting to see some corn here and what the corn looks like in the field when it's getting ready to be harvested. And then this is what it looks like if they were emptying their combine, or their auger is emptying that hopper into the semi truck. And then right here, this is kind of how they would empty that semi truck, either into a grain bin or at the grain elevator there. You can see it's going between the rows, and then that combine's going to turn around and it will harvest that last row in that field. You can kind of see down below here all of the corn stalks going out the back and what those kind of look like after the field has been harvested. And so we can put our cattle out there to kind of graze on the stalks that have been left over from harvest as well. I'm actually going to share my screen one more time so we can see the different steps here. Mitch, where do you take your corn after it's been harvested?
This year, about half of my corn crop is going to the local elevator, and then half of it is going to our grain bins. The stuff that's going to the local elevator is the stuff that I had previously sold ahead of harvest. We don't have enough storage or enough grain bin storage to store all of our crops. And so we always have to kind of plan ahead and kind of make a game plan on how we're going to get all of either our crops to the elevator or get them to fit into our grain bin facilities.
Great. So this picture right here that I'm sharing is a picture of an example of a grain elevator where they could deliver that corn to. And then this might be what a grain bin might look like on a farm where the farmer might store it and use it for later, like Mitch described. All right. As we wrap up, do we have any last questions for Mitch before we end today? All right. I see some in Mrs. Shaw's class.
When is the most time the cows come?
When do the cows typically come to the field?
The first field that I have harvested, I'm going to have cows show up here in about a week. They're typically here from the first part of November until about February or March. Once the ground starts to unthaw and it gets kind of muddy, if we have cows in the field still, it'll make our fields really, really rough. And so then we have to go in and do extra tillage that we don't like to do. So we like to have them off before it unthaws, but then they don't come until, like I said, about that 1st of November.
Great, thank you. I have another question from McQuinn's class, and it says, how long does it take to harvest your crops typically?
Well, like I said in our text previously, if the stars would have aligned, we could have been done this week, but the stars haven't aligned, and we still have another probably 10 days yet. We started our own harvest on the 27th of September, and we'll finish probably around that 5th to 10th of November. So a little over a month typically for us.
Okay. We have another question from Christian from Chandler View, and they want to know what the price of corn was last year versus this year, and how does it kind of change with the market?
Well, last year when I started in the spring, corn was $3.30 a bushel. And by the end of harvest last year, so in like the November, December timeframe, corn was well over $5. So very rarely do we ever see a drastic thing like just because it's really hard to plan on. Typically throughout the year, if we see like a $1 to $1.50 swing, that's pretty typical. The market's pretty flat from last year at this time now. And I think the market today was like 530 or 540. So we're still at a really good market price for farmers. And so, yeah, it's making farming a little bit more fun this year.
Why do farmers harvest at night? Does the weather affect harvest as humidity and dew points?
The biggest thing that the humidity and nighttime effect is for soybeans. The soybeans, there's so many more soybean plants in the field versus corn, and our head is for soybeans, that when soybeans absorb moisture, they become really, really hard to cut. And so when it gets dark out, we usually have to stop. With corn, that's not the case. We're able to go as late as we want, honestly, unless it's raining at night. So
great. What affects corn harvest? I know we mentioned a couple of them, but what can slow it down throughout the growing season? I know you kind of said you know you're hoping to be done this week, and now you think there's going to be about 10 more days left of harvest.
Well, the number one thing with every single year is Mother Nature. We can never predict weather. I mean, we can only just go until it rains or stuff like that. So the other thing that can slow it down is combine breakdowns or any other issues with any other machines. And then the other one is if the corn isn't ready to be harvested yet. So you could have one field be ready one day and the next field might not be ready for another week. So it's just kind of a waiting game. That's what kind of how, when we're sitting down to plan out the year, we kind of plan out what corn products we're going to place in certain areas. So we kind of have a game plan harvest before the year even starts.
Very good. Yeah, I have another question here. It says, so we know that farmers sometimes have to use pesticides or herbicides to get rid of the insects and the herbicide or the weeds on their farms. How do farmers do that in a sustainable way so that they're protecting the soil and they're not over applying and protecting our water?
Yep. So the biggest thing is we work very closely with our local cooperative, and they work very closely with chemical companies, and the chemical companies will provide us with rates to spray certain products at, so we're not over applying or under applying. If under apply, you have a problem with the plants or the insects not dying from the application. And if you over apply, then you have the adverse effects of it could actually hurt the soil or get into the groundwater. And so we have to be very, very cautious and very careful on what we spray, when we spray it, and obviously around what other crops we spray. So it's a very touchy subject in the world of ag right now. And so we try our best just to be good stewards of our area and the crops that we have.
Yeah, that's a great way to kind of show that farmers care about our land and our soil, and they're there to protect it because they're growing food for the next generation, and it's their passion in life, and that's how they want to be able to pass it down to your kids. I know you have some kids, and so that's something that you want to be able to share with them in the future. We're going to take one more question. I see a hand in Mrs. Shaw's class, and then we'll wrap up here.
Do you get bored when you're harvesting them and like waiting to harvest them?
You ever get bored while you're harvesting or on downtime?
On downtime like today, yes, I get very bored some days because it's a lot of sitting around. But during harvest, no, we try to keep it moving as much as we can. When I'm sitting in the cab of the combine, there's so much for me to watch and listen to and pay attention to that it's pretty hard to get bored, just because I'm sitting in a really expensive piece of equipment, and the crop that I'm harvesting is going to be ultimately what I make money on throughout the year. So I have to be very, very cautious and very careful about how the machine's running and how the crop's looking. So sitting in the combine in particular is definitely not a boring job.
Very nice. Thank you. And I'm going to wrap up with one last question. Have you made a corn maze before in your cornfield?
Have I ever made? I've never even been through a corn maze, believe it or not. So no, I have not.
There we go. Yeah, farmers typically want to harvest their corn so that they can sell it to turn it into a food product or to feed livestock animals or to do that. And so we get a lot of different byproducts from the different types of corn that people in Nebraska grow. And I just wanted to say thank you so much, Mitch, for taking time out of your day. I know, unfortunately, we weren't able to actually get into the field, but I hope everybody that joined us today could also get to see a little bit about what it was like to harvest with our video. But it's really important that we're able to have Mitch on here to ask some questions too and kind of see what it's like for farmers during harvest time. And so corn is so important to Nebraska, and it provides us with fuel, food, and our fiber and other byproducts that we use each and every day. So I just want to say thank you for joining us today and hope that everyone learned a little bit more about harvest. And I see a lot of comments coming in from teachers saying thank you as well, Mitch, for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Brooke. And if you guys have any more questions, feel free to reach out to Brooke and she can pass them along to me. So
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep,
Appreciate
thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.